Fucking desk is always just so dirty. It doesn't stay clean. Now, before we begin, let me answer the question I'm sure I will inevitably be asked. Why-oh, where's the next game review? Why is the next video taking so long? Get back to work. Stop fucking around. I know. I've been neglecting you guys. Just disappearing without notice. But I have great news. I finally got it. I do have some things to say, but I'll save them for after. Pad the playtime out a bit. Because today, I want to talk about this. This is a Nintendo Entertainment System, more commonly known as the NES. We talked about this one on the other channel. I scored this for $1 about 6 months ago. Just like $70 in today's money. Sounds insane, but on closer inspection, it's kind of obvious why. This thing is incredibly yellowed, and someone took a bite out of it there. It only came with a power cord. There's no controllers and no games. I don't even know if this thing works. Honestly, looking at the RF shielding on the inside that's rusted and the ports that are in worse for wear, pretty sure this thing has been in a flood. But even if it doesn't work, it was $1. Who cares? I'd rather this be a shelf piece than in the trash. This thing's got a ton of weight on its shoulders though. This is the console that revived the video game market. In the early 80s, there was a massive video game boom. It was a new, rapidly expanding technology and a new form of media for the entertainment industry to take advantage of. And of course, that led to investors getting involved. People with a lot of money and very small brains, hoping to make that money bigger. The issue is you got a lot of businesses and investors wanting in on the scene without actually understanding how to apply it properly. But time is money, and I'll be damned if someone beats me to milking this cash cow. So screw applying it properly, just apply it to everything. I want this on shelves yesterday. At the time, there was no real rules or standards to publish a video game, even on mainstream consoles. This led to a ton of spin-offs, adaptations, and simulators of just about anything you could think of from companies that had no business developing video games. And because everybody was racing to be the first in the market for whatever, there was a lot of bare-bones rush shovelware. Think of the guy on the old steam-driven trains just shoveling coal into the fire to keep the engine running. But in this case, it's suits shoveling garbage games into the video game market. Shoveling and shoveling and shoveling. Until video games went from a massively successful and popular media to nuclear waste almost overnight. People just outright stopped buying games and consoles completely, which spelled disaster for companies producing mass amounts of shovelware as they suddenly had a giant money sink on their hands. For example, Atari and E.T. I think everybody knows about the urban legend of Atari burying a bunch of copies in a landfill, which was later confirmed to be real when they were found in New Mexico. They had to bury over 700,000 games, not just E.T., all of them. Keep in mind, games were about $40 a piece, over $30 million dumped and just buried. But E.T. was really only the straw that broke the camel's back. There was hundreds of thousands of titles being released that were just a landfill on arrival. At the end of 1983, the video game market was practically dead. Luckily, big companies learned their lesson and stopped mindlessly pumping money and bad marketing into trends they don't understand. Flash forward, Nintendo wants to sell a new game console, so they made the Famicom and released it in Japan in 1983. It took a little bit, but it was popular. The video game culture in Japan didn't take as much of a hit as the rest of the world. They can get away with selling a console that looked like a console. Barely. But they didn't release it in the US. It looked too much like a game console. It would just blend in and people would ignore it. Because the video game's bad, so they had to figure out a way to get into your home without noticing. He built arcade cabinets using the Famicom's hardware called the Nintendo Versus System as an experiment. They wanted to see if A, people would use them in the first place, and B, if they would enjoy it. If they liked them at an arcade, they'd probably like them at home. And they did like them. A lot. The next hurdle was actually selling the console itself. Simple. Don't sell it as a console. Sell it as a computer. Popularity of personal computers were on the rise, and Nintendo planned to use that to their advantage. The original redesign looked more a bit like a cassette player, and had a full-size keyboard. There was also a deal they were making with Atari at the time, but Atari was stumbling around drunk in a state of panic after the market crash. Julian! Never ended up happening, and it fell through. So they pulled back a little, and eventually they landed on the silver and black lunchbox. Pretend this isn't horribly yellowed. No more vibrant contrasting colors, and the top-loading cartridge slot was replaced with a mechanism sort of like a VCR, which was the point. The Famicom looked like a toy, like a proper video game console that would sit on the floor between two little rugrats. This could live permanently on a shelf in your entertainment center and blend in. It looked modern, sophisticated. Well, whoever owned this probably liked it for its familiarity. Your disappointed family and snobby friends would be none the wiser that you bought a video game console. I mean, why would you? Don't you know how stupid those things are? You did lose the controller slots, but the controllers for this one were removable, so you could just wrap them up and throw them in a drawer so you can ruin a collector's day 30 years from now. Now, it did take more than just the console itself to convince people, so enter Rob, the Player 2 robot companion. It was marketed as a toy to get into toy stores. It was marketed as a toy to get toy stores to order stock of this stuff. James' channel already has a video on that. I'm already well outside the lines of plausible deniability here. Oh yeah, no one's been in here for a while. Nintendo slowly rolled out the NES to the public across late 1985 and throughout 1986, taking it slow, unsure of how people would react. Ooh, yeah. It didn't take long for people to realize that they had been tricked, lied to, deceived. But once the anger, yelling, and cartoonish fainting subsided, they loved it. And that love built confidence in the video game industry again. And to help strengthen that confidence, Nintendo required developers to get their own seal of approval to sell games on their consoles. No more shovelware. Ooh, that was crunchy. I love that one. I did learn that this is an actual expansion slot. I was right about it the last time I talked about this thing. My good screwdrivers have all disappeared. I don't know what happened to them. What's inside a $1 NES? Oh my god. I just now realized the lighting is probably horrible, but oh wow. Get a taste of that. The NES and Famicom would end up getting a few more redesigns and refreshes over the course of the 80s. Remember how I said the Famicom could barely be sold in Japan? I'm not sure how true this is, but Nintendo had trouble finding retailers that would sell the Famicom in Japan because it required a TV, which they didn't have in stock. Usually just bought those through magazines. In response, Nintendo and Sharp stuffed one in a TV. They are also sold in the US, but towards the end of 1989. I'm not sure how common they are, but I'd love to get my hands on one at some point. For the future. This is interesting to say the least. Let me finish this off so that way nothing spills into this. That's actually the extent of my historical script. Everything is now freestyling. Ugh. Let's just set that off to the side. I'm actually noticing now the actual slot that the cartridge connects to the console doesn't actually move with this. So I'm guessing when you put it in, it leverages on that, and then when you press it down, it makes contact with that connector. Huh. I've never taken apart a NES. I've never played with a NES. I'm a PlayStation boy. Have been since the PlayStation 1. My mom had a NES, and actually, that's another story that I think I'll bring up anyways. It's not related to anything NES history related, but it's a fun story that she told me, and I think you guys would find funny. My mom and my uncle had a NES, and they would play it all the time. My family lived in Tornado Alley, not usually home to many major tornadoes, mostly just small EF1 and EF2 tornadoes. And apparently the story goes is that they booted this up, and we're playing, I want to say, I'm not sure what they were playing, but they were playing against each other, and they were playing for so long and were so invested in it that they didn't notice a tornado pass by. And so when my grandma woke up and looked out the window, the barn was gone. All because you're too distracted playing this. Oh. Now it's got to come out, because now I've lost that. I don't think this has maybe been in a flood, but it has certainly had something spilt on it at some point. That is a very rusty assembly. I wonder if I can get replacements. Ahoy! Trying my damnedest not to break this connector, but it is. Hey, I'm being poked to death by solder joints on the backside of this board. And now that just goes like that. Ooh. Actually, the backside doesn't look nearly as bad. But it also doesn't look great. There's a lot of capacitors that are kind of bent and touching. I don't think that's a problem, but I'm also not quite sure if that's a good thing. Look at all of these chips. I have no idea what I'm looking at, and I'm not even going to pretend like I do. Ladies and gentlemen, a NES. Yeah, well, first of all, looking at this, I'm very glad that I never tried to plug this thing in to see if there's any sort of life, because that does not inspire much confidence for me. But I'm also not sure if this is an easily replaced part or not, or what I would even call this. I'm guessing this is like all the power supply and everything, the giant capacitor here, and the inside of this does not look very Oh yeah. I don't know what I plan to accomplish, but we did something. Now I gotta put this back together. I'm gonna put it back together, but I'm gonna leave things unplugged because I'm actually planning on, at some point, trying to fix this. Because I would like to use it at some point. Shove those down in there. There's actually a lot of empty space in here. I'm not quite sure how much of this is Famicom still, and how much had to be recreated and is specifically for the NES. And imagine all the chips and everything are the same, but nothing beyond that. Obviously, I don't know if this board is Famicom, and then there's an adapter for this system here to make this system work on the Famicom's board. That's all stuff that's beyond me. I can't wait to take this apart in like 3 months and decide it's not worth fixing, and then it just kind of sits for the rest of its life. Budget and power constraints have been holding me back lately, along with my own common normal person issues, but I am kind of sick of not having anything to show for this channel when I promised I'd be more active. So instead of waiting for the small moments where I can work on big projects, I'm going to try and be a bit more creative with my time and make videos like this that I can edit on my phone. If you think you like it, let me know, because I've got all sorts of stuff I'd like to talk about. I didn't even bother to finish actually putting the screws in there. I just put the top on just because I could.